the cowboy spent one night with the Apache girl. 9 months later, she gave birth to something huge. The cowboy had been traveling for weeks, his horse's hooves pounding the dry plains as the sun rose and set in endless rhythm. He was a man used to solitude, a traveler who knew the land better than any person he had ever met. He carried with him a small bag of essentials, a worn-out map, and a rifle, though he preferred to avoid trouble rather than seek it. His life was simple in some ways, yet lonely in many others. Each day he moved forward, never staying in one place too long, always following the horizon as it stretched endlessly before him. One afternoon, while crossing a narrow valley between two rocky hills, he noticed a small settlement in the distance. Smoke curled gently from a few clay and wood huts, and children ran barefoot along the dusty paths. For the cowboy, this was unusual. Most travelers avoided settlements unless necessary, but something about this one drew his attention. Perhaps it was the way the sunlight glimmered on the low hills, or perhaps it was the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from the place. He approached cautiously, keeping his horse slow, observing the people from a distance. There was no hostility, no shouting, no signs of danger, just life. A man repairing a fence, women tending to small gardens, and children chasing one another in laughter. And then he saw her. She was carrying water from a nearby stream, her step steady, her posture proud. Her dark hair glinted in the sunlight, tied simply with a strip of cloth, and her eyes were focused yet calm. There was a grace to her movements, a rhythm that made him pause. He had seen many people in his travels, but something about her presence commanded attention. It wasn't just her beauty, though. She was undeniably striking. There was the confidence in her movements, the quiet strength that seemed to flow from every action she took. For a moment their eyes met. She didn't smile and he didn't speak. Yet in that brief glance there was a connection that neither could explain. It was as if they recognized each other from some unknown place, some invisible thread tying their lives together for this single moment. The cowboy dismounted and tied his horse to a nearby tree. He walked slowly toward the settlement, keeping his hands visible so that no one would mistake him for a threat. The villagers glanced at him, some with curiosity, others with caution. He nodded politely but said nothing. As the afternoon turned into evening, dark clouds began to gather. The wind picked up, carrying with it the sharp scent of rain. He could see the girl glance toward the horizon, frowning slightly. She returned to her hut, quickly finishing her chores, and then paused, as if waiting for something. The cowboy realized that he too was waiting, though he did not know what for. The storm hit suddenly, faster than he expected. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking the plains and turning the dirt paths into muddy streams. Thunder rumbled in the distance and lightning lit up the sky in jagged flashes. The cowboy sought shelter under the eaves of one of the huts. The villagers moved quickly, bringing animals and supplies inside, securing the doors and windows. The girl appeared beside him, offering a small smile despite the rain. She gestured for him to follow her to a larger shelter nearby. Inside, the warmth was immediate. Smoke from a fire curled upward, and the air smelled of cooked food and wet wood. The villagers had gathered in one large room, sitting quietly as the storm raged outside. The cowboy nodded his thanks to her and took a seat near the fire, letting the warmth soak into his soaked clothes. They spoke little at first, exchanging only necessary words. He asked her about the settlement, about the land, and about life here. She answered calmly, her voice steady. Revealing a deep knowledge of her surroundings, he shared his own story, though only fragments, avoiding details he wasn't ready to reveal. There was an unspoken understanding growing between them, a quiet curiosity that drew them closer despite the storm and the differences in their lives. As the night wore on, the storm showed no sign of letting up. Rain pounded the roof, and the wind howled against the walls of the hut. The girl noticed his unease and handed him a blanket, her fingers brushing briefly against his hands. It was a small gesture, but it carried warmth that went beyond mere clothing. The cowboy felt an unfamiliar comfort in her presence, a sense that he was no longer alone in the world, even if only for this moment. They shared stories by the fire, tales of survival, of family, and of journeys long past. She spoke of her ancestors, of the land and its sacred traditions, of the values that had been passed down through generations. He spoke of open plains, of wandering under the stars, and of the quiet loneliness that accompanied a life spent traveling. Their voices wove together, blending into the crackle of the fire and the rhythm of the rain outside. As the hours passed, the storm continued, relentless and unyielding. The hut felt like a small, safe world, a bubble of warmth and human connection, in the midst of the wild and unforgiving land. Their conversation slowed, replaced by a comfortable silence. They sat close to the fire, feeling the heat, feeling the presence of one another, without needing words. In that quiet there was an understanding. They were two people from different worlds, thrown together by chance and circumstance. And yet, there was a pull, a force, that neither could deny. It was not just attraction, though, that existed. It was a deep sense of trust, of shared humanity, that made them lean toward one another, closer than they had imagined. The night stretched long, and the storm outside seemed to mirror the growing intensity of their connection. The cowboy found himself drawn to her in ways he had never expected. Her eyes, steady and calm, held him in a gaze that felt like both an invitation and a challenge. She met him without fear, without pretense, and in that moment all the barriers between them dissolved. They shared a quiet, intimate night together, not just physical but emotional. A night where stories, glances, and touches spoke louder than words ever could. They were aware of the fleeting nature of their encounter, yet in that time, nothing else mattered. The storm raged on outside, but inside there was only warmth, connection, and the profound feeling of two lives intersecting for a brief, unforgettable moment. When dawn approached, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the settlement. The cowboy and the girl lay quietly, knowing that soon reality would return. They could not stay here forever. Life called them back to their separate paths. He dressed quietly, avoiding disturbing her sleep. She stirred slightly, offering a small smile, a silent farewell. There were no promises, no plans. Only the memory of a night that had changed both of them in ways they could not yet understand. With a final glance, the cowboy mounted his horse. The girl watched him ride away, her heart heavy, yet filled with a strange sense of hope. Neither of them spoke of what had happened, yet both knew that their lives had shifted in ways beyond their control. As he disappeared over the horizon, the girl felt a stirring of something new, an intuition that this night, brief as it was, carried consequences that would reveal themselves in time. She returned to her daily tasks, but her thoughts often drifted to the cowboy, to his quiet strength, to the night that had passed between them. The cowboy riding through the plains felt it too, a memory that lingered, a quiet connection that he could not shake. He continued his journey, unaware that the most unexpected part of their encounter was yet to come, that life had already begun to weave a story neither of them could have predicted. And so the plains stretched before him, endless and untamed, while a new chapter quietly began in the life of the Apache girl, a chapter that would unfold in ways neither could foresee, carrying the promise of something extraordinary yet unknown. Months passed after that stormy night, and the Apache girl found herself living with a quiet sense of anticipation she could not explain. The memory of the cowboy, his steady eyes and calm presence, lingered in her mind like the echo of a distant song. Life in the settlement moved on as usual. She carried water from the stream each morning, tended the small garden behind her hut, and helped her family with daily chores. She laughed with the children, shared stories with the elders, and respected the traditions of her people. But beneath all these familiar routines, something new was stirring. At first she noticed small changes, tiredness that came earlier than usual, a slight queasiness in the morning, a tenderness in her body she had never felt before. She brushed it off, telling herself it was just the rhythm of life, the result of work and responsibility. Yet deep down she sensed there was something more. She remembered that night with the cowboy, the connection that had felt so real despite its brevity. Her intuition whispered that perhaps life had quietly begun weaving a new story, one that involved the cowboy in a way she had not yet realized. Days turned into weeks and the feeling grew stronger. She began noticing changes in her body more clearly. her stomach growing rounder, a heaviness she could not explain, and moments when her heart raced with nervous excitement. She did not know much about pregnancy, but she had seen women in her settlement give birth before. Something within her told her that she, too, was carrying life. The thought filled her with a mix of fear and wonder. Fear because she was unsure how the future would unfold, and wonder because she felt a tiny spark of life growing inside her, a spark that felt miraculous. The girl began confiding in her family. Her mother and the elder women in the settlement were supportive, though they noticed the nervous tension in her voice. They offered guidance, told her stories of their own experiences, and assured her that she was strong enough to face what was coming. Their words gave her courage, but they could not erase the questions in her mind. Who was the father? Would he ever know? How would her life change once this new life entered the world? As the seasons changed, the girl adapted to the rhythm of her growing body. She moved carefully, sometimes resting during the hottest part of the day, sometimes sitting by the stream to watch the water ripple over stones and reflect on the life ahead. She began keeping a small journal, writing down her thoughts and observations. She wrote about the moments of quiet hope she felt, the small kicks that reminded her there was another life inside her, and the memories of the cowboy, the warmth of his smile, the steady calm in his presence, the way he had made her feel safe for that one magical night. Despite her uncertainty, she remained strong and independent. She did not let fear dictate her life, nor did she allow whispers from others to shake her resolve. People in the settlement noticed the change in her. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, as though she already knew she was destined for something significant. There was a glow in her eyes, a mixture of excitement and determination, and even the children noticed her softer smile and patient demeanor. Meanwhile, the cowboy was far away, riding through plains and valleys, unaware of the life that was growing as a result of their brief encounter. He thought of her occasionally, recalling her steady gaze, her gentle strength, and the way the firelight had danced on her face that night. There was a quiet longing, a subtle curiosity, but he never imagined that life had already begun to intertwine their paths in ways he could not yet see. Back in the settlement, the girl began preparing for the arrival of the child. She learned from the elder women how to care for herself and the baby, how to ensure she remained healthy, and how to respect the natural rhythms of life. She made small changes in her diet, ate nourishing foods, and spent time meditating near the river. Connecting with the energy of the land around her, each day she felt the life inside her move more actively, a gentle reminder of the miracle growing within. Her thoughts often wandered back to the cowboy. She imagined telling him someday, wondering how he would react to the news. Would he be proud, surprised? Would he come to meet the child, or would he continue his travels, unaware of the extraordinary life he had helped create? The questions were endless, but she tried to focus on what she could control: the well-being of her child, the strength she needed to face the coming months, and the patience required to let nature take its course. As the months went by, the girl's body grew round, and the movements of the child became stronger and more pronounced. Each kick was a reminder of the connection she had with the cowboy, a tangible sign that their lives were linked in a way that neither could deny. She would sometimes place her hands on her stomach, feeling the small but powerful movements, and whisper words of encouragement to the life growing inside her. "Be strong," she would say softly. "We will face this together." Neighbors brought gifts of cloth and small toys. Elders shared wisdom about childbirth and raising a healthy child, and friends offered help with daily chores. There was no judgment, only care and respect, and the girl felt grateful for the support of those around her. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew she would not face it alone. There were quiet moments of reflection, when she would sit by the river and watch the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about the cowboy, the night they had shared, and the future that was beginning to take shape. She imagined the child she carried, wondering who he or she would become, what traits they might inherit, and how the world would respond to their presence. The possibilities seemed endless, and the excitement mingled with a gentle anxiety that never fully went away. Despite the uncertainty, the girl embraced the experience with courage. She practiced breathing exercises, learned how to move comfortably, and took care of her body as best as she could. She spoke to her child as if it could understand her words, sharing hopes and dreams, promising safety and love. Each day, she felt stronger, more resilient, and more connected to the life she carried. At night, she would often lie awake listening to the sounds of the settlement, the quiet breathing of her family, the distant hooves of horses, the wind rustling through the trees. Sometimes she imagined the cowboy riding nearby, imagining her as he had that night, unaware of the bond that had been created. She wondered how life would bring them together again, if it ever would. The thought lingered like a soft hope that refused to fade. And so the months passed. The Apache girl moved through her days with patience and courage, preparing for the arrival of her child while carrying the memory of the cowboy in her heart. She embraced the unknown with quiet strength, feeling the tiny kicks and movements of the child as constant reminders of the miracle she was nurturing. She was ready to face whatever came, knowing that this life, though unexpected, was precious beyond measure. The world outside the settlement continued its rhythm, unaware of the extraordinary events unfolding within the small huts and gardens. Yet within the girl, a new chapter was beginning, a chapter of life, of hope, and of anticipation. The connection she had shared with the cowboy, though brief, had set in motion a story that would change everything. The child she carried would be a living testament to that night, a bridge between two lives that had crossed paths for a fleeting, unforgettable moment. And in the quiet moments when she touched her stomach and felt the life moving inside her, the girl knew that something extraordinary was coming, something that would test her strength, fill her heart with wonder, and create a bond that neither time nor distance could ever erase. She did not yet know the size or strength of the child, but she sensed that this was no ordinary life. She only knew that she would face it with courage, with love, and with the quiet hope that the cowboy somewhere out there would one day share in the miracle that had begun that night during the storm. The months of anticipation had finally led to this moment. The Apache girl, who had carried her child with quiet courage and hope, now felt the unmistakable signs that labor was beginning. Her body ached in ways that were both familiar and new, each wave of pressure reminding her that the moment she had long prepared for had arrived. She called softly to the elder women of her community, who had guided her throughout her pregnancy, and they moved quickly, preparing a space in the hut for the birth. The room was warm, lit by the soft glow of a fire, with blankets and cloths carefully laid out. The air smelled of herbs used to calm and support the mother in labor, mingled with the earthy scent of the wet ground outside from recent rains. The elder women spoke in soothing tones, encouraging her with gentle words, reminding her to breathe deeply and trust her body. She followed their guidance, closing her eyes and focusing on each breath, each wave, feeling the strength within herself and the life growing inside her. The labor was long and intense. Hours passed, marked by the rhythmic sounds of her breathing, the soft encouragement of the elders, and the occasional distant calls of animals outside. Every movement of her child was felt sharply, a constant reminder of the strength and vitality of the life she carried. Though her body was exhausted, she felt a deep determination to bring this child safely into the world. She knew that this moment would define a new chapter for both herself and the life she carried. Her thoughts drifted to the cowboy, whose presence she had felt so strongly months before. She wondered how he would react to the news of the child, though she knew he was far away, riding through plains and valleys, unaware of what had begun all those months ago. She did not dwell on worry, however. Instead, she focused on the child, on the miracle of life, on the small movements that promised a future filled with strength and possibility. As the labor progressed, the movements of the child became more pronounced. The elders watched with a mixture of concern and awe, noting the unusual strength of the baby even before birth. They adjusted their guidance, using their experience to help the mother through each contraction, offering support and reassurance as needed. The girl drew on every ounce of energy she had, her mind focused entirely on bringing the child safely into the world. Finally, after many long hours, the moment came. The child was born with a cry that seemed louder and more commanding than usual, echoing through the small hut and startling even the animals outside. The elders were astonished as they took in the size and strength of the newborn. It was immediately clear that this was no ordinary child. The baby's limbs were long and strong, the body unusually large, yet perfectly formed. The energy that radiated from the child filled the room, leaving everyone in awe. The girl looked down at her child, exhaustion mingling with amazement. She felt an overwhelming surge of love, a bond that went beyond anything she had ever imagined. This tiny being, though extraordinary in size, was hers, a part of her, a living testament to the night she had shared with the cowboy. She held the child close, feeling the warmth and strength, whispering words of comfort and promise. The elder women moved carefully, assisting with the aftercare, praising the girl for her strength and courage. They marveled at the health and vitality of the baby, commenting that such a child was rare, perhaps even destined for greatness. The girl listened, absorbing their words but focusing mainly on her child, who seemed alert and aware, even in those first moments of life. She felt a mixture of pride and humility, realizing that the life she had nurtured had emerged as something extraordinary, something that would shape the future in ways she could not yet fully understand. Neighbors and family members came to witness the birth, offering congratulations and gifts. There was no fear, only admiration and respect for the girl's strength and the remarkable nature of her child. Stories would be told later of this birth, of the courage and determination of the mother, and of the child who arrived into the world with power and presence far beyond expectation. In quiet moments, the girl reflected on the path that had brought her here. She thought about the cowboy, wondering if he would ever know about this child, if he would see the result of the night they had shared. She felt no anger or resentment, only curiosity and hope. She knew that life had its own way of unfolding, and she trusted that the future would reveal the next steps when the time was right. As the days passed, the child continued to grow and thrive. Even in those first few days, it was evident that the baby possessed extraordinary strength and vitality. The elders watched closely, noting how the child responded to touch, sound, and movement with alertness and energy far beyond the usual newborn. The girl found herself both amazed and humbled by the life she had brought into the world. Recognizing that this child was unique in every way, she spent her days caring for the child, learning and adapting to the demands of motherhood. Each feeding, each soothing motion, each quiet moment of bonding deepened her love and connection. She began to see traits that reminded her of the cowboy: calmness, resilience, and a quiet determination. Even as she marveled at the child's own individuality and strength, the community remained supportive, offering help whenever needed. Friends brought food, neighbors assisted with chores, and the elders continued their guidance, teaching the girl how to care for a child with such remarkable size and vitality. She embraced their wisdom, combining it with her own intuition, and found a balance between tradition and her personal understanding of what her child needed. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, the girl held her child close and looked out over the plains. The wind carried the scent of grass and earth, the same wind that had blown during that stormy night months ago. She felt a quiet sense of destiny, a feeling that this child had arrived, not just by chance, but for a purpose beyond her understanding. She whispered promises to the child, words filled with hope, love, and courage. "You are strong," she said softly. "You are special, and we will face the world together." Even as she rested, she could not ignore the thought of the cowboy. Though she had raised the child without him, she often imagined his reaction. If he were here now, would he be amazed? Proud? Would he finally understand the significance of the night they had shared? These thoughts did not trouble her. They simply reminded her that life had many mysteries, and that the story of this child was just beginning. The baby's presence changed the rhythm of the settlement. Life continued, but now with a new energy that seemed to flow from the child. People marveled at the baby's strength, at the alertness and energy that radiated even in such early days. The girl felt a deep sense of pride, knowing that she had nurtured this extraordinary life and brought it safely into the world. As nights passed and days turned into weeks, she began to notice more remarkable things. The child's growth was rapid, far faster than she expected, and the energy never waned. Even small movements seemed strong, purposeful, as if the baby were aware of the world and ready to face it from the very first moment. The elders commented that this child was destined for great things, and the girl felt a quiet pride, understanding that her child was indeed something extraordinary. Though the cowboy was still absent, she began to feel a connection to him through the child. There were moments when she imagined him smiling at the baby, recognizing in their eyes and strength a reflection of himself. She hoped that one day he would know, that he would witness the miracle that had resulted from a single fleeting night. Until then, she embraced the responsibility, love, and awe that came with raising a child unlike any other. And so, life settled into a new rhythm. The girl and her child faced each day with courage and determination, guided by the wisdom of the elders, supported by the community, and strengthened by the bond that could never be broken. The child, born of extraordinary size and vitality, was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unexpected wonders of life. Though the world outside the settlement was vast and unknown, the girl knew that together they could face anything. Each day brought new discoveries, new joys, and new challenges, all embraced with love, courage, and a quiet understanding that life had a way of surprising those who trusted in it. The child had arrived, and with it came the promise of a future filled with potential wonder and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Months had passed since the birth of the extraordinary child, and life in the Apache settlement had settled into a new rhythm. The girl had grown into her role as a mother with strength and grace, caring for her child with patience and love. The baby, already showing signs of unusual size and vitality, had become the center of attention, admired by everyone in the community. Friends and family marveled at the child's energy, alertness, and remarkable growth. The girl felt proud, but there was always a quiet thought that lingered in her heart. What about the cowboy? Would he ever know of the life that had grown from that one night they had shared? Meanwhile, far away, the cowboy traveled the open plains, thinking occasionally about the girl. He had not known of her pregnancy or the child that had been born, yet a memory of that stormy night haunted him in gentle ways. Her calm strength, her steady gaze, and the warmth of the connection they had shared. He had assumed that their lives had moved on separately, and yet there was a quiet curiosity that he could not ignore. Sometimes he wondered what had become of her, whether she had found happiness, and what stories the land had written in her absence. One day a messenger arrived at his camp, a rider from a nearby settlement who carried news of the girl and her child. The cowboy listened in disbelief as the messenger described the birth, the size and vitality of the baby, and the strength of the mother who had cared for it. The details were astounding, almost beyond belief. He felt a rush of emotions: surprise, pride, awe, and a sudden sense of responsibility. The news confirmed what he had never imagined. The brief night he had shared with the girl had resulted in a life that was both extraordinary and demanding of his attention. Without hesitation, he prepared for the journey to the settlement. He traveled with determination, riding day and night across plains and rivers. His mind focused entirely on the reunion that awaited him. The journey was long, but each mile brought him closer to the girl and the child he had never known he had fathered. With every step he imagined the child, strong, alert, full of energy, and felt a deep sense of anticipation mixed with nervousness. What would it be like to meet them? Would the girl welcome him? Would the child recognize him in any way? When he finally arrived at the settlement, the scene that greeted him was peaceful and full of life. Children ran across the paths laughing, while elders tended to gardens and animals. The huts and spaces he had once observed from a distance now seemed familiar in a strange and new way. And there she was, the girl, now a mother, standing with her child in her arms. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, the past and present collided. Time seemed to pause as they studied each other, emotions unspoken but understood. The girl felt a mixture of surprise, caution, and curiosity. She had raised the child alone for months, guided by the elders and supported by her community. Now the cowboy who had once been a fleeting part of her life had returned. She did not know what to expect from him, whether he would take responsibility, whether he would show interest, whether he would accept the extraordinary reality of their child. Yet in his eyes she saw something familiar, recognition, respect, and a quiet sense of awe. The cowboy approached slowly, careful not to startle the child. I heard about the baby," he said softly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I had no idea He stopped, unsure how to express the mixture of shock and pride he felt. The girl watched him carefully, noting the sincerity in his tone, the gentle way he observed their child. She felt a tentative hope, tempered by months of self-reliance and careful observation. "Come closer," she said finally, her voice calm but firm.
You can meet them.
She handed the child to him, and the moment the baby's small hands touched his, the cowboy felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. The child's energy was astonishing, strong yet gentle, and there was a quiet awareness in the eyes that seemed to study him intently. He realized immediately that this life was extraordinary, more than he could have ever imagined. He held the child carefully, feeling the weight and warmth, marveling at the strength in the tiny body. He whispered softly, words filled with awe and connection, promising protection, love, and guidance. The child responded with movements that seemed deliberate, energetic, and full of life, as if sensing the bond forming in that moment. The girl watched, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and relief. The cowboy was here, present and engaged, ready to share in the responsibility and joy of their child. For hours they talked, sharing stories of the months apart, recounting the experiences of the girl and the child, and discovering the ways life had continued in their absence. The elders and community members observed with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the reunion was one of hope, respect, and understanding. There was no judgment, no recrimination, only acknowledgement that life had its own way of bringing people together at the right moment. The cowboy learned about the child's growth, the strength, and the remarkable vitality that had amazed everyone in the settlement. He listened with awe as the girl described the first movements, the first words, and the extraordinary energy that had been evident from birth. Each story filled him with pride, gratitude, and a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that this child was a living reminder of a single fleeting night that had grown into something beautiful, life-changing, and extraordinary. As days passed, he remained in the settlement, learning to care for the child alongside the girl. They developed a rhythm, sharing responsibilities, exchanging guidance, and building a relationship that was both gentle and strong. The child thrived under their combined attention, growing even more energetic and alert, and the bond between the parents strengthened. There were moments of laughter, quiet reflection, and shared wonder as they watched the child explore the world around them with curiosity and vigor. The girl began to trust him fully, seeing in his actions a sincerity that had been absent in the months apart. He was present, involved, and dedicated to the life they had created together, proving that fleeting moments could have lasting impact when met with responsibility and love. They discussed plans for the child's future, ways to nurture the extraordinary vitality, and how to ensure the little one grew with courage, wisdom, and strength. The community supported them, offering guidance, resources, and encouragement. Friends and family celebrated the reunion, helping to integrate the cowboy into the life of the settlement and acknowledging the extraordinary nature of the child. There was a sense of harmony, a quiet acknowledgement that life had unfolded in unexpected yet perfect ways. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the girl and the cowboy sat together near the fire, watching the child sleep peacefully in a blanket between them. The sky glowed with shades of orange and pink, and the air carried the familiar scent of earth and grass. The cowboy reached for the girl's hand, and she met his gaze. In that moment, no words were necessary. The journey of months, the trials, the anticipation, and the awe of the extraordinary birth, all converged into a quiet, powerful understanding. "This child," he said softly, "is amazing. I never imagined Thank you for everything." His voice trembled slightly, full of honesty, humility, and wonder. The girl smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "We created something remarkable," she said. "And now we face the future together." She felt hope, pride, and excitement, knowing that the path ahead, though uncertain, would be navigated with love, courage, and shared responsibility. The child stirred, opening large, curious eyes, and reached toward both of them. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried immense significance. A symbol of connection, unity, and the extraordinary bond between life, love, and destiny. They laughed softly together, overwhelmed by the presence of something so powerful and beautiful, yet so tender and human. As days turned into weeks, the trio became inseparable. The cowboy learned the rhythms of caring for the child, from feeding to play, while the girl continued to guide them with wisdom and patience. They shared responsibilities, exchanged knowledge, and strengthened the bond that had begun with a single night, but had grown into a shared life filled with hope and love. In the evenings, they would walk together through the plains, watching the horizon, feeling the wind and talking quietly about dreams for the child's future. They imagined the adventures, the challenges, and the joys that awaited, confident that together they could nurture a life that was strong, kind, and full of promise. The child's extraordinary size and energy continued to inspire awe, a constant reminder of the miracle they had brought into the world. And so, life moved forward. The brief encounter that had once seemed fleeting had transformed into a lasting, meaningful bond. The cowboy, the Apache girl, and their extraordinary child became a family in every sense, embracing the unknown with courage, resilience, and love. The child, full of vitality and strength, became a symbol of hope and possibility, demonstrating that even the most unexpected moments could lead to incredible, life-changing outcomes. They watched as the sun rose over the plains, feeling gratitude for the journey, for the surprises, and for the extraordinary life they now shared. Together they faced the future with open hearts, knowing that the connection that had begun one stormy night had grown into something extraordinary, a life, a family, and a story that would continue to unfold with wonder, strength, and love.